Come here. Rae, come here. This is Rae, and this is Rae's roadmap to success. Now, Rae is a great little dog, but she's got some anxiety. She did a little bit of grumbling when I first arrived, and the guardian, to be the nice host that she was, said, "Oh, Rae, don't do that." We never want to correct a dog for growling or grumbling or any of those things. We see that as a negative and aggressive behavior. I always like to think of the growl as the dog's way of saying, I don't agree with that, I disagree, or I don't like something. So if your dog does that, the best thing you do is increase the distance between your dog and whatever it is. Any sort of punishment or correction, we really do that a lot of times for social pressure. We feel like the person that my dog growled at needs to hear me correct my dog. That's not the case. So, a matter of fact, that'll make it worse. Now, if your dog does walk by somebody or a dog and he doesn't do and behaves well, yes, and give your dog a treat. The times that we give our dogs the treat the least are probably the times we should give it the most, which is when they do the things that we want them to do, but we take those for granted. So if she ever looks at a dog and doesn't bark, make sure you pet or give her a treat. Say your marker word and then do it. You don't necessarily have to do the marker word. I would probably like to do it as well, but yes, and then give a treat. And so now I'm just saying, looking at a person gets you a treat. Or I'm saying that I like it when you don't bark when you see people. Now it's gonna take her a lot of repetition before she figures that out, but she's not as intense as a lot of the dogs that I've worked with in terms of reactivity, but she is a terrier, and terriers, kind of do kill other rodents, not dogs usually. But they can be more dog reactive. All right, so we started off the session. The guardian had gone with when she was adopted the dog, she loves the rescue that she got the dog from, but they set her up with a trainer that sounds like is kind of a aversive trainer, or maybe a balance trainer. Didn't like using treats, had her poking the dog, using the hissing sound, short leash. A lot of the old constructs of the old force and punishment-based dog training that we don't do anymore because they create frustration. They can lead to anxiety and stress, and all dog aggression comes from stress. And guess what? Rae started to display leash reactivity. And this is probably because I feel trapped. If we have a short leash, the dogs might feel like I can't flight, so I have no choice but to fight. So fortunately, the guardian works in healthcare, and so she understood a lot of these things were things that she didn't feel comfortable with and she didn't think were appropriate, so she let a lot of them slide on her own. So you got a good guardian there, Rae. But any sort of punishment or aversive training is not the way to go about it. If you can't find a way to do it positively, find a dog behavior consultant like myself or a positive dog trainer that should be able to give you some tips to get through, or you can watch my videos. I've got thousands of videos with all sorts of tips. All right, we started off by, after we discussed that, we went over common mistakes and we went over marker words. The marker word that she uses is yes. So we're going to use, and we did a loading exercise. So use yes or the click. Now, I usually like to use the click, like the exercise in the video above. I might use a clicker for that one because it's more distinct and it's a little bit more proximate sound. Where inside, we're probably just gonna say yes for coming to me, laying down, things along those lines. So make sure that you use that, and make sure that by the time you guys seen this, you guys should have already loaded it. So you just walk around the house, yes, treat. Walk to the next room, yes, treat. Dog doesn't have to look at you, sit, or do anything. They don't know the treat's coming at first, so put it in their mouth. And the clicker is the same thing. Click and yes are identical, just a different word or a different sound. Okay, so after that, we did some hand targeting. Touch, boop, yes. And so hand targeting is, I have a video on that if you forget how to do that, but use that as well as the positive interrupter. So, and look how quickly I was able to get Rae to come run away from the railing of wanting to bark at another person by using that positive interrupter sound, and I threw my hand down. And remember, we want to use the cue for that eventually, so boop, yes, and then she gets the treat. So remember, the cue comes before the action, and we don't say the cue unless we're 90% certain the dog's going to do the action. I'd recommend you come up with a list of the official command words, and then say vocabulary or Jeopardy, or come up with a watchword for each other. So if I say vocabulary, that means you're using a different version. A lot of us talk to dogs as if they speak English, and then we make them learn 10 ways of saying come as opposed to just one. And so it's 10 times harder. So come up with that list of vocabulary words. It makes it a little bit easier. And if your dog has difficulty with it, just lure him into the position and just use your marker words consistently until eventually you say the marker, you can consistently lure him into a sit, yes, lure him into a sit, yes, lure him into a sit, yes, and then say sit, then I lure them into a sit and say yes, and then give the treat. And remember, you can drop saying the marker word once the dog, you can say the cue and the dog does it, but there's nothing wrong with saying, continue to use the marker word for the rest of the dog's life as well. All right, We also talked about maintenance, getting some bamboo reed matting and blocking the bottom of the deck for the area so she can't see out of there, which is going to take away a little bit of her benefit. Make sure you say the word. Fine. Rae! Puppy, puppy, puppy! Rae! Rae, yes! Oh, you did such a good job! That's really hard. Once she gets worked up, at that point you might have to pull her away. We prefer not to do that. But the idea is to practice, like I talked about in the video above, so often here that it becomes easier for her to move away because she's practicing. We've only done it for 5 minutes. Okay, we also went over, let me see, where else was I? The hand targeting is a nice way, alternative way of calling your dog and also repositioning your dog. Next, we went over dog consent. Remember, dogs don't like being petted on top of the head. Anywhere in this oval is where the better place to pet your dog is. But if your dog offers cutoff signals, turns its head to the side, lowers its head, backs away, freezes, bares its teeth, growls, drools, refuses to come to you, rolls over its belly, these are all the dog's ways of saying, I don't like whatever that is. If you can learn your dog's body language and look for those cutoff signals, and you see as soon as the dog sees a person and turns its head to the side, and you do a find it that direction, now I forget about the boogeyman over here and I'm going over here and doing this. So it's kind of managing your dog's behavior and helping them practice good dog behavior patterns. Now the Guardian's doing a great job. She's doing the hurricane. I have a video for that. So if you want to learn how to do that, let me know. But you're doing a great job, and I can give you the video will kind of help shore it up. But that's doing, right now she's doing a hurricane. So instead of the dog barking and Rae running over there, Rae's focused on her Guardian because her Guardian's giving these tasty chicken liver treats. Also for those treats, make sure you don't leave the bag open. They will get hard as a rock if you leave them open because they have almost no preservatives. Remember that when it comes to food, the smell is number 1, temperature is number 2, taste is a distant third. Let me see. We also talked about, teaching a dog manners, essentially. So teaching a dog manners is when a dog paws at you or barks at you or nudges you for attention. It's saying, give me some attention. And that's not a bad thing, but I'd like the dog to ask for attention, maybe by sitting. So next time she paws at you or does one of those things, say sit. If she sits, say your marker word yes, pet her anywhere in this oval, and then give her as much attention as you like. If she doesn't sit, no punishment, no correction, just lean back in your chair, go back to chiseling your statue, making your art, writing your song, whatever it is that you're doing. Hey, Rae, I was going to do this for you, but you can't be bothered to sit. That's okay. I'm on to the next thing. Now Rae's missing out, and we're not punishing Rae with a negative punishment. We're not taking anything away because she didn't have the affection in the first place. But boy, as soon as she sits down, if she sits within 2 seconds of me saying it, I'm going to say a marker word and pet her, and after a while, she'll start sitting in front of you to prepay for the attention. Come up with a watchword. I usually like to say manners. So if somebody comes to the room and says manners and I'm petting Rae, I would say stop petting her and say, Rae, sit. If she sits, I'd say yes, pet her on the chin and say, actually, I asked her to sit and you missed it, but I did do it right. So, but thanks for reminding me because I do forget to ask her to sit. Now, is it wrong to pet your dog for not sitting? No. But the more that we pet our dogs for sitting, laying down, coming to us, eye contact, the more they're going to offer those behaviors. So it's just a really good habit to get into. It'll take you and your dog about 2.5 months to get in a habit of doing it. But if you do, every time you pet your dog, it reinforces a healthy leader-follower dynamic, helps your dog practice obedience. It makes your pets more valuable. And there's a fourth one, I can't remember what it was. But basically, there's a lot of beneficial things for that. We also talked about capturing, what I like to refer to as celebrating, which is rewarding the dog when it does behaviors that you like on its own. So if Rae were to come to me and I just say yes and pet her, she sits down, yes, and I pet her. She lays down, yes, and I pet her. She drinks water. She just poops. So when the dog, remember, we're going to say the marker word the instant the dog does the thing that we want, or at the conclusion. Like for potty training, we'd say the marker word at the end of going potty. But for celebrating, it's just basically celebrating the things the dog does that we want. Remember, good attention, bad attention for dogs is about the same thing. So if we get into a habit of giving our dog attention for the right things, that's what they're going to do. And instead of giving attention for the wrong things, we say, and then hand target, and then we get Rae to come over here. And then I might give her a bully stick or a lick mat or something else to do. And that leads us to mental stimulation, or what a lot of people refer to as enrichment. It's important for dogs to be physically exercised as well as receive mental stimulation. Sniffing on walks burns significantly more energy than walking without sniffing. So as long as it's safe to do so, let your dog sniff. Now we're in Santa Monica, pretty busy part of Santa Monica. There's not a lot of space. If your dog's reacting to something, the best thing you do is increase the distance between you and the dog. In this neighborhood, there's not a lot of that option. Also, not a lot of grass area, a lot of concrete, urban jungle. So if you go on north of Montana to that really nice neighborhood, and the guardian is in a habit of snapping, and the snap will not work as well as the positive interrupter once you've really gotten established, but you're in a habit of doing the snapping. So when you catch yourself doing that, just give the positive interrupter and then a hand target or something else. So if you can go to a park where there's a big area where you can see more if the person's coming. Right now, you're going to have people popping out of the, suddenly. You're not going to see them. That's going to startle her. It's going to trigger her. It's going to make her practice being reactive. So the idea is go to nice neighborhoods that are nice and green, or a park in a green area, and have her practice. Do the find it's there when there's no dogs around. So she's used to doing it all the time. Sniffing is a displacement behavior. It's also calming and relaxing for dogs. It's what they should do. We want to encourage our dog to do it, and the find it is a great way to help encourage them to do that. And so I'd like you to try to limit walks in areas that are going to trigger her for the next 2 or 3 months, and focus on just doing the walks in other neighborhoods where there's good sniffs and plenty of open space. But there's other things we can do to play burn energy. We can play tug of war. We can play fetch. Remember, when you're doing fetch is as you throw the ball, and then when she brings it back to you, hold the treat out and wait for her to drop. When she drops it, say your marker word, pop in her mouth. Only then do I pick up the ball. And once my dog's really good at coming and dropping the ball, then when it drops the ball, I tell it to sit, and only when it sits do I pick up and throw the ball. So the idea is we're going to add a little bit more criteria and have the dog practice a little bit of self-control every time we play fetch. I got to get it, bring it back to you, drop it, and then sit down and then wait for you to throw it. And at first we only wait a half second, but eventually we wait 10 seconds. Now, don't wait so long your dog gets anxious, but the idea is helping the dog practice self-control in small segments here and there throughout the day, sneaking into all sorts of activities. Let me see. So, and tug of war, anytime she's mouthy. So remember, don't let her mouth you. As soon as she's mouthing you, stop petting her. You could stand up and walk away. That's a negative punishment. I don't like doing that too much. I'd probably prefer you redirect her. Or recognize if she's mouthing a lot, she might need some exercise. Play a game of fetch, do some training. And training is a great form of mental stimulation. Remember, keep the training sessions less than 2 minutes, always end on a positive note, and practicing a lot of variety, facing this way, standing, sitting, in this room, in that room, all over the place. Let me see, other forms of mental stimulation, feeding out of a snuffle mat, getting an Omega Paw Tricky Trainer treat ball. They make one that looks like a Kong it's like a weeble wobble. It's got a hole. If they knock it just right, a couple pieces of kibble or come out of it. So I'd feed her out of the snuffle mat, get some treat dispensing toys. You already have some puzzles. Give her a Kong. Also get her lick mats. Lick mats are great things for her to do. So she's get used to using a lick mat over here, and she's hearing sounds of dogs, but she can't see them anymore. She's like, forget them, I'm just gonna sit here to lick. Licking and chewing release those endorphins, makes her feel good. So those are good things for her to do. Let me see, we also went over Cookie in the Corner. In the video above, I talked a little bit more about a find it. Now, Cookie in the Corner, remember, we're asking the dog to come back to us. The orientation game that I was talking about in the video above is where I toss the treat. When the dog gets it, I wait for the dog to look at me. When the dog looks at me, I say yes, and I throw another treat to where the dog is, to the right or left side. So eventually the dog's like getting a treat, looking here, and then getting a treat here, instead of running towards you. And the reason for that is I want her to practice being on this side of the deck, because this is a wall. There's the fencing over there. That's where she's practicing barking and reacting. So again, it's helping her practice running away from here, and then it's practicing having her stay over here. And the more a dog does something, the more they're likely to continue doing it. And remember, exercising her before you do this sort of thing. Remember, exercise can be a great setup. So exercise her a game of fetch. Give her 10 minutes to rest, then come out here and practice this stuff. Take note of your neighborhood. If there's people that are coming by at a certain time, then maybe exercise her before those times. And again, record the audio of all the dogs that come by there. Maybe just have a day and walk behind people and just record on your phone the audio of their dog collar jingling and the person's footsteps. And then you can do that counter conditioning desensitization exercise where you play at a very low volume, dog doesn't react, gets a treat, and gradually you raise that volume up. It sounds like they're running through your house, and Ray's looking around to see who's going to give me a treat. Let me see, what else did we go over? We went over the importance of rules and Premax. Premax is a less desirable behavior, earns me more desirable behavior. So every time you go through a door, tell her to sit. If she doesn't sit, walk away, wait 1 minute, come back and tell her to sit again. She has 2 seconds to sit. If she doesn't sit this time, I walk away and sit down for 2 minutes. Next time I sit down for 4 minutes, then 8 minutes. Keep double the length of time. But as soon as I walk over there and say sit, and she sits, the door opens. So I have the leash and stuff ready to go. I do the same thing with this door here. I know the dog door is open some of the time, but if she's coming out through the human door, have her sit. She can go out first. I don't care about that. But the exercise I showed you about helping her practice staying there, and then you guys go through first and come through. Remember, break it down to small steps. You forget all the little nuance of that. Message me. I'm happy to go over that with you. And if she walks away from there voluntarily, give her a treat big time. Because anytime she does a desirable behavior, something that's different than what you used to, make sure you reward that. Because the more you reward that, the more she's going to continue doing that. So pre-max, and then some rules. Don't let her be within 7 feet of you when you're eating. Have her stay out of the kitchen when you're eating. And again, do like I showed you from the dog bed. Tell her to sit, take 1 step to the kitchen, come back, give her a treat. Eventually it's 10 steps in the kitchen. Eventually it's in the kitchen, banging pots and pans around, open the refrigerators, bacon sizzling. But each time I come back and give her a treat. So don't do it when you're cooking. Work up to that when you're not cooking. So that way she practices. And before you're going to cook, I would do some warm-ups for that. Stay or sit, and then go walk in the kitchen, turn around, go back. Do like 5 or 10 of those. And then you can also have her practice going to the dog bed. What I like to do is I just toss the treat on the dog bed, and then the dog usually goes there. I say yes when the dog steps on the dog bed, then it licks up at the treat. But be mindful. If you see her go to the dog bed on her own, say the marker word and throw a treat. So now go here. It rains treats, man. Why wouldn't I hang out here? This is the place to be. And have her practice going there when there's there's people out. Puppy, puppy, puppy! Rae! So right there, I would go touch her nose. So we're trying to do everything, and it's just too intense for Rae. So if that's the case, go over and touch your puppy's nose, and then do the same thing, and then you might drop 5 treats over her. And once she's reactive like this, it's really hard. So remember, you're not gonna, and I don't care if she barks, this is just for you guys. I think she's doing it for the neighborhood, not for me. But remember, it's one of those things that the more you practice it, the easier that stuff's going to get. But if she gets hysterical, she's not going to listen to anything you do. If you have to, you can pick her up and take her away. I try not to do that because that can create some frustration as well. There's cars there's a dog right out there. It's really hard. Now, sometimes a less desirable behavior or the loss of something is stronger. So if she does that again, open the door and see if you can just walk away for her to go like that and just say, bye, Rae, and run inside. Dogs like to play chess. So if you run, she might feel abandoned. Now, if she's really in the heights of it, she's hysterical. She's not going to hear what you're saying. That's why we want to try to manage the situation and curate experiences so she doesn't get to that point. Let me see. The video above covers the counter conditioning and desensitization. If you want to work on the loose leash walking, the stuff that we're starting to work on here, let me know. We can set something up in about a month and work on that. But on your walks right now, 2 little tips. Have a treat in your hand at all times. Anytime she looks at you, say your marker word and hold the treat out. Don't go to her. We want her to practice coming to you. And then you can also use that pause interrupter sound. When you're walking and she gets, don't do it when there's dogs around, but every time she gets the end of the leash, the instant she gets the end of the leash, and then hold that treat out, she's going to come over to you. You give her that treat. After you do this enough, so you might feed her like 100 treats. This is why a lot of people use kibble on a walk, but eventually she's going to feel that pressure on her neck or on her harness and turn around automatically and come back to you. And every time you catch her walking next to you, yes, give her a treat. Some people will keep a handful of treats in their hand and they're walking, the dog's just kind of touching the nose to her hand. If I forget, we want to leave it. If you forget if I don't have it linked up above in the text, please send me a text and ask me if I can share that video or link it above. And you can practice that leave it cue. Eventually, when your dog has a strong leave it, you could say leave it when she's starting to go towards the deck and she turns around and comes back to you because, again, instead of not getting anything, most of the time we expect our dogs just to not get it and not be rewarded for getting it, which we would never do for ourselves. So I'm going to pick up the $100 bill I see. Somebody can't just say not to do it unless somebody says, don't get that $100 bill, get this one. Then I'd be willing to leave the one on the street because I'm not losing anything. Also, try to avoid taking things out of her mouth. I just remember that. So when she has a low value item, quietly pull out a treat, hold it to her nose, don't tell her to do anything. When she drops it, say your marker word, put the treat in her mouth, and don't touch the object. And after a while, she'll do it with more and more frequently and easier. And after a while, she'll come and spit that ball out for you. All right, I'm trying to think. Is there anything else you want me to cover? Feeding on snuffle mats, we already talked about. Is she over there? Yeah. Rae! Rae! Let me see if you're a black dog and it's night out. Let's see if I can get you up here. I got some good crumbs. Well, you probably can't see much of Rae, but this is Rae, and this is Rae's roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. only sometimes you mean it.